Los Angeles, 1994. A Denny's off the highway, morning light, cheap coffee, booths full of regular people living regular lives. One man slides a paper bag across the table. Inside, $300,000 cash. For a friend, for the man who taught him everything. The man he trusted like a father. Then the jackets flip FBI. Every door, every angle, all at once, hands up, cuffs out, but not on the man sitting across the table. Not on the man who set the price. Not on the man who made the call. He just sat there and smiled. The one who handed Ricky the empire just handed him to the feds instead. This is the story of Freeway Ricky Ross, the man who built an empire and got played by the one who handed him the bricks. But this story doesn't start at Denny's, it starts south of the 10 freeway. Let me paint the picture. South Central Los Angeles, a neighborhood drawn on a map by people who never lived there. Redlining government policy that told banks, don't lend here, don't invest here, let it rot. For decades, entire zip codes were circled in red and left to die. No new businesses, no capital, no way out that the system recognized as legitimate. Then Reaganomics hit. The manufacturing plants that had kept black working class families afloat gone. Tens of thousands of jobs evaporated. The middle class that had been quietly building itself up through the 60s and 70s erased. By the time crack cocaine arrived in the early 80s, there was no economy left to speak of south of that freeway, just the street, and whatever the street was offering that day. Now think about this for a second. 1986, University of Maryland, a young basketball player named Len Bias drops dead hours after being drafted by the Boston Celtics. Cocaine intoxication. The country loses its mind within days, not months, days. Reagan signs a new law. 50 grams of crack cocaine, minimum 10 years, no discretion, no context, just time. Here's what they didn't tell you. That same law treated powder cocaine, the expensive kind, the kind moving through penthouses and private clubs at a ratio of 100 to 1. You needed 5 kilos of powder to trigger the same sentence as 50 grams of crack. Who used powder? Who used crack? Y'all already know the answer. One of the lawmakers who wrote that bill said it himself years later.
I knew that these laws were a mistake when we were writing them. There are tens of thousands of black people in prison serving sentences that are decades excessive.
He knew, they all knew, the system never tells you about the consequences. It just shows you the opportunity and steps back into this place, into these streets, into this particular silence. Walked a kid with a tennis racket. His name was Ricky Ross, not Freeway, Ricky Ross, not yet, just Rick. One of many Ricks in the neighborhood. There was Fat Rick, Skinny Rick, and the one who stayed by the freeway. That's how it started, a nickname from the block, nothing more. He grew up in South Central, right off the freeway, in a house where the refrigerator was empty more often than it wasn't. He knew what struggle looked like before he had a word for it. But here's what most people skip when they tell this story. Ricky Ross had a way out, a real one: tennis. Not the sport of his neighborhood, not the sport of South Central. But Ricky found those courts and something clicked. He picked up a racket and never put it down. While the block was pulling his friends in one direction, he was on those courts going another way entirely. Hollywood High School had an all-white tennis team. They came to play Dorsey. Left humiliated. Ricky and his teammates annihilated them. The Hollywood coach was so impressed, he asked if Ricky could transfer to his school. Ricky said no, didn't need to go anywhere. He was already winning right where he was. Second team all city. First team all conference. Arthur Ashe, the Arthur Ashe came out and hit with him. Think about that for a second. A kid from South Central trading shots with the greatest black tennis player who ever lived. This was not a kid born to be a criminal. This was a kid on a trajectory. Then the door closed. Ricky and his best friend made a plan. LA Trade Tech College. They were going together. They walked in to fill out the enrollment application. His friend started reading through the form, then stopped, looked at Ricky.
Yeah, what this say? And what this say?
That was the moment, right there. The truth that nobody in 12 years of school had ever stopped to address. Ricky Ross could not read, not a sentence, not a paragraph. The system had moved him through grade after grade, handed him a diploma, and left him functionally illiterate, at the door of the only institution that could have changed his life. The school turned him away. Not because he wasn't smart enough, not because he didn't want it, but because no one had ever taught him how to read. And now that gap was a wall. So a kid with real talent, a real plan, turned away at the only legitimate door available to him. What does he do next? A friend laid it out on the table. Literally, white powder. Man, this is cocaine. This is gonna be the next thing since sliced white bread. Ricky had already seen Superfly, the most successful black man he'd ever seen on screen, draped in everything, moving different. That image had been sitting in his chest for years. Then the big homies got in his ear. Homie, you shouldn't be playing tennis. That's for sissies. This is what you need to be doing. First pack $50 worth, a pimp on Figueroa, beat him out of half of it inside an hour. Lost his first deal before he made a dime. But nobody told him what it was going to cost him in the end. They never do. They just show you the money and let you fill in the rest yourself. He started with $300, not 300,000, not 300 kilos. $300 pooled together, scraped up, turned into the first package. He sat on the porch. A Cadillac pulled up slow, window came down. Rick, you got any more of that? That was the beginning. 1980. Someone showed him rock cocaine for the first time, a piece the size of a match head, $50. Ricky looked at it and thought, how is this possible? How does something this small worth this much? He turned it over in his hand, did the math in his head, didn't need to read to do that. If this is real, I'm all in. It was real. People came around in the mornings already needing it, already. They wouldn't leave. They sit there all day waiting for the next hit. Ricky saw that and understood something immediately that most people miss entirely. This wasn't just a product, this was a lock. Once it had you, it kept you. He started cooking it himself. Baking soda heat, the process was simple once you knew it, and the result, he called it Ready Rock. Ready to put on a pipe and smoke, no waiting, no freebase setup that took too long, just ready. His operation had one rule above everything else: speed, volume, faster than everybody, better than everybody. While other guys were moving cautiously, Ricky was already thinking 3 steps ahead. His mind never stopped working. He wasn't getting high, wasn't smoking, wasn't distracted, just moving up the ladder, then up again. But here's where it gets complicated, because the guy who was about to change everything wasn't from LA, wasn't even from America. His name was Danilo Blandón. A teacher Ricky knew, Mr. Fisher, a man he used to play tennis with, made an introduction, said he knew some people, Nicaraguans. Ricky didn't think much of it, showed up, shook hands. Blandón was unlike anyone Ricky had dealt with before. Soft-spoken, no bling, no flash, formally educated, the kind of man who didn't need to perform power because he actually had it. He took Ricky to an apartment, laid out the prices, and right there in that room, the margin jumped. $20,000, $30,000 more per day just from that meeting. Before him, we were just average street hustlers. When Danilo hit the scene, he basically laced us. Boots, money, weapons, low profile, the whole nine. What Ricky didn't know, what he had absolutely no way of knowing, was why Blandón had chosen South Central specifically. It wasn't random, it wasn't loyalty, it was calculation. Blandón's family had been part of Nicaragua's ruling class before the Sandinista revolution toppled everything they had. He needed money to fund the Contras, the counter-revolutionary force fighting to take the country back. The CIA needed that operation funded without congressional approval. And cocaine sold in American cities was the fastest way to generate that cash. So why South Central? Blandón said it himself to someone else years later. The logic was simple and cold. You go into these neighborhoods, there's no cops, you can sell wherever you want. And when they start killing each other, nobody cares. That was the business model. Black neighborhoods, no protection, no political consequence. Perfect disposal site for a covert operation supply chain. Ricky Ross was the distribution system. He just didn't know it. I didn't even know what a Contra was, nor did I care. All I cared about was, did I have my drugs on time? Was the price gonna be right? And that's exactly how the system works, y'all. You don't need to know who you're serving. You don't need to understand the machine. You just need to do your part. The people at the top are counting on the people at the bottom, staying focused on the money and nothing else. Now watch what happens when that machine gets moving. Ounces became kilos, kilos became tens, tens became hundreds. Ricky got to a point where he could receive $1 million worth of cocaine and move it in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, then call back for more, $1 million per day, not per month. Per day? When Magic Johnson signed his contract, $1 million a year, Ricky read about it. Well, someone read it to him, and his reaction was immediate.
Man, chump change. I got $1 million gonna come in tomorrow.
Let that land. 14 and 15-year-old kids in his network were purchasing 10 keys at a time. $350,000 at 15 years old, because that's what the ecosystem produced. Children with adult money and no understanding of what came next. Nobody told them either. LA got too hot. So the operation expanded. Cincinnati, Chicago, Ohio, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Arkansas. The further south you went, the better the margins. What sold for $10 in Chicago went for $50 in Arkansas, a 5-to-1 markup just for crossing state lines. 13 delivery locations running simultaneously in South Central alone. This wasn't a gang, this was a corporation. Distribution infrastructure that covered multiple time zones and didn't have a name on a business card. Now think about this for a second. The man running all of this couldn't read a single word on a piece of paper, not one word, and nobody knew. Newspapers were printing his name. Federal agencies were opening files with his name on the tab. The streets from LA to Cincinnati were saying his name like a warning. Freeway Ricky Ross, and the man himself couldn't read a single one of those words. His employees feared him. His suppliers respected him. His competitors watched him. And somewhere in some LA newspaper, his name was printed in ink he could not decode. If he could read, would he have seen what Blandón really was? Would he have caught the signs earlier? Would 3 words on a government document have told him what was actually happening? In my neighborhood, it wasn't cool to read one sentence. That sentence cost him everything. Because a system that tells a generation of kids that reading isn't cool is a system that needs them to stay blind. At the peak, Ricky was skiing in Aspen every year, vacations across the world counting $1.5–2 million in a single sitting. The Crips bought from him, the Bloods bought from him, sworn enemies sharing the same supplier because Ricky wasn't in the gang business. He was in the distribution business. Blandón brought the weapons in alongside the cocaine. Uzis, Tech 9s, AK-47s, Thompson machine guns that could punch through car engines. The guns and the drugs arrived together. One fed the other. NWA was writing songs about exactly what was happening on those streets. Master Spade bought his first turntables with money from drugs he got from Ricky. The music was a documentary, and the streets were the film set. We thought this life was forever. We was kids, man, just living this dream, kids. That's the word he used. Kids living a dream that nobody had told them had an expiration date. But somewhere above all of it, above the money, above the empire, above the Ready Rock and the 13 locations and the 45-minute turnaround, a machine much larger than Ricky Ross was running. And it had needs of its own. The question is, who was actually in control? Let's talk about what this actually looked like at its peak. $1 million a day is not a metaphor. It's a logistics problem. You need people to move it, people to hold it, people to count it, people to deliver across 13 locations simultaneously, just in South Central alone, 13 at the same time. On any given day, this was not a gangs fight over corners. This was a franchise, a distribution network that rewrote the economics of an entire city. A year and a half before Ricky hit his peak, the DEA was tracking crack in 7 cities across America. 7. By the time his operation was fully running, more than 40. That expansion didn't happen by accident. That was infrastructure. Ricky's fingerprint on 40 American cities, and here's what made it spread so fast. Crack democratized the drug trade. Put in $300, walk out with $900. No big connect needed, no years in the game. Anyone could enter, anyone could scale. All they needed was a supplier. There was only one supplier moving weight like that in LA. You bought from Ricky, or you didn't play. Now, above Ricky, there was always Blandón, 45 minutes. That's how fast Blandón could deliver whatever Ricky needed whenever he called. The pipeline never ran dry. At one point, Blandón offered to take it further, teach Ricky to fly a plane, move product directly across borders. $800,000 per trip. Ricky turned it down. I make $800,000 on the ground, But think about what that offer reveals. Someone was already flying the question Ricky never asked because he didn't know to ask was where the money went when it left South Central. Nicaragua. The Contra rebels, a CIA covert operation that Congress had explicitly defunded. The agency needed another revenue stream, and cocaine sold in black neighborhoods where, as Blandón himself said, nobody cares when they start killing each other was that stream. The LA Sheriff's Department got close once. They raided a house connected to Blandón's network. The man inside opened the door and said it straight. I work for the CIA, you're not supposed to be here. They found military documents, weapons information, no drugs. The next morning, federal agents arrived and seized every piece of evidence the sheriff's department had collected. Everything gone. Detective Robert Juarez stood there and said what everyone already felt.
I think we're into something that's bigger than us. Something we really can't deal with.
And below Ricky, the cops were building their own corruption inside his operation. Officers seizing drug money on raids were keeping portions for themselves openly. The captain said it plainly.
If you want to keep your job, you keep taking that money because the sheriff's department needs it.
One detective described his first cut, a paper bag in a parking lot, passed hand to hand. He took it, understood immediately what it meant. Once you've done that, you're dirty, there's no going back. CIA above, dirty cops below. Ricky in the middle holding the machine together without knowing he was holding anything at all. And this, I genuinely believe, is the most underrated part of this entire story. This wasn't a drug empire Ricky Ross built. This was a pipeline the US government needed, and Ricky was the guy holding the other end of the hose without knowing it. So if the CIA was protecting Blandón from above, what finally broke everything apart? The task force had one job, find Ricky Ross. Problem was they didn't know what he looked like, didn't know what he drove, didn't even know his real name. Fake ID rotating cars. Ricky walked through their checkpoints while they were looking for someone else, invisible, untouchable, until someone inside talked. An informant started feeding the task force. Locations, movements, timing. The walls Ricky couldn't see were closing in. One night, he and his crew left the Palace of Wheels. Unmarked cars picked up the trail immediately. Trail technique. Staying back, rotating positions, following without being seen. Ricky spotted a face he recognized, a detective. He hit the door before the car stopped rolling, jumped and rolled, running before he hit the ground. Shots fired behind him. He made it to a house nearby, knocked, got pulled inside. Dogs swept the neighborhood block by block. When they found him, the beating started immediately, teeth knocked out. All the skin on one side of his face gone. He did not look like a human being when they were done. Then a cop reached into his own vehicle, pulled out a kilo, placed it in Ricky's car, took photos. His mother heard they were going to shoot him on sight. She convinced him to turn himself in. In the interrogation room, the cops didn't hold back, called the judge a black bitch, called his lawyer a cokehead, said they controlled her, said they owned the whole thing, every word recorded. The judge heard the tape, looked directly at the prosecutor. Case dismissed. This is outrageous. Ricky walked out free this time, but outside those courthouse doors, everything around him was dying. His auntie, the one he loved, came out of dialysis and went straight back to the crack house, died in a coma days later. 3 kids, 11, 12, 13 years old, got into a car after someone gave them crack. The car flipped. All 3 died. Ricky sat alone, gun in his hand, thinking about whether any of this was worth continuing. The empire was still standing, but the man inside it was already gone. That night, sitting alone with a gun in his hand, someone knocked on the door. Small knock, almost nothing. Ricky opened it. A kid, maybe 10 years old, standing there in the dark. Man, I need something. 10 years old, already addicted, already gone that far down. Ricky looked at him and said, "Get out of here. You stay on this path, you're going to die." The kid looked up. "Are you gonna die too?" Ricky put the gun down. That was the last night he sold cocaine. Not a court order, not an arrest. A 10-year-old boy asking a question nobody had ever asked him before. He moved to Cincinnati, bought into motels, wanted out for real this time. Wanted something legitimate, something that couldn't be taken in a raid. Then the phone rang. Blandón was calling through an intermediary, but it was him. What Ricky didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Blandón had already been arrested, had already cut a deal with the federal government, had already walked free? The US government had paid him $166,000 for his cooperation, and now they were pointing him directly at Ricky. The offer was simple: 100 kilos, $10,000 per kilo, an extraordinary price. Too good. Ricky knew the game well enough to hesitate. The calls kept coming. Weeks turned to months. The number kept sitting there, pulling at something he thought he walked away from. They had price points they knew would trigger me. He took the meeting, Denny's. Los Angeles, morning light. Ricky slid a paper bag across the table, $300,000 cash. For a man he had trusted like a father, jackets flipped, FBI, every exit covered. Blandón sat still, didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Ricky's partner Chico got away initially, looked in the rearview mirror as he drove. Blandón was still sitting there at the table laughing. Ricky ran, construction site, jumped the fence. Shots fired, dogs when they caught him. The dogs kept biting after the cuffs were on. He did not look like a human being when it was over. In court, Gary Webb's reporting on the CIA-Contra pipeline was making national headlines while Ricky waited for sentencing. Ricky took the stand himself to testify against the cops who had planted evidence and won that case, but not this one. Blandón testified for the government. The jury had no choice. Ricky was convicted, life sentence. His mother broke down in the courtroom. Ricky and Chico ended up in the same holding tank 15 minutes later. Damn, Chico, man, what happened? They gave me life. He sat there and thought about his mother crying in that courtroom, thought about what it meant for her, thought one thing clearly: you just killed your mom. Then 2004, Gary Webb found at home, 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Official ruling died when Ricky heard the news. His first thought came fast and simple: they got to him. The one man who had told the truth gone. Federal prison. Ricky Ross, 28 years old. Another inmate made him flashcards, letters, sounds. He walked the yard every day with those cards in his pocket. They laughed at him. The Kingpin learning the alphabet. He didn't stop. 3 years, 4 years, reading every day. Then he moved to law books. They laughed harder. He didn't stop. One day, 3 words jumped off the page: continuous criminal spree. He filed the appeal himself. No lawyer, no help, just a man who taught himself to read in a prison yard, arguing his own case to a federal court. The Court of Appeal agreed. Life sentence reversed. People don't beat federal life sentences. Ricky Ross did. He walked out with nothing, moved in with his mother, 85 years old, living in a house worth $220,000 with $440,000 still owed on it. The man who once called $1 million a day Trump change, now selling t-shirts to survive. Meanwhile, a former correctional officer was rapping under his name and cashing checks. Ricky would never see no empire, no friends left standing, just a shop and a mother who needed her son home. Reagan signed the law. The CIA ran the pipeline. Blandón walked free with $166,000, and Ricky Ross, the man who couldn't read his own name in the newspaper, spent 21 years paying for all of it. So when you look at Freeway Ricky Ross, do you see a kingpin, a victim, or a man who got used by a system so big he didn't even know it had a name? Drop that in the comments, because I genuinely don't think there's one right answer. This one's for y'all. If these stories hit different, go subscribe real quick.